So Ted Cruz, the most hated man in the Senate, once again makes an ass out of himself. Let's talk about today's video. Hi, I'm Mike Greiner. I'm a lifelong Democratic activist who's concerned about the direction our country is taking. If you share my concerns, maybe you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, maybe even click that little bell that will notify you when I post something new. So Ted Cruz has been variously described as arrogant, patronizing, and generally called a jerk by pretty much everybody in the Senate. Ironically, he's no dummy, having been called by his former law professor, Alan Dershowitz, one of the most brilliant students he ever had. Nevertheless, sometimes you have to wonder what he's doing. He got himself into some hot water recently with the MAGA crowd by calling the January 6th invasion of the Capitol a terrorist act. Tucker Carlson took umbrage at this characterization, calling it a blatant lie. Let's take a look at Tucker Carlson here raking Ted Cruz over the coals on that point.
We are approaching a solemn anniversary this week, and it is an anniversary of a violent terrorist attack on the Capitol, where we saw the men and women of law enforcement demonstrate incredible courage, incredible bravery, risk their lives to defend the men and women who serve in this Capitol.
You called this a terror attack when by no definition was it a terror attack. That's a lie. You told that lie on purpose, and I'm wondering why you did.
Well, Tucker, thank you for having me on. When you aired your episode last night, I sent you a text shortly thereafter and said, listen, I'd like to go on because the way I phrased things yesterday, it was sloppy and it was frankly dumb. And
I don't buy that. Whoa. I don't buy that. Look, I've known you a long time, since before you went to the Senate. You were a Supreme Court contender. You take words as seriously as any man who's ever served in the Senate. And every word you repeated that phrase. I do not believe that you used that accidentally. I just don't.
So, Tucker, as a result of my sloppy phrasing, it's caused a lot of people to misunderstand what I meant.
Well, I hate to say that I agree with Ted Cruz on this point, because frankly, there's not much I agree with Ted Cruz about. But the attack on the Capitol was certainly an act of terrorism. Let's take a look at how Congress has actually defined terrorism in its statutes. Congress defines domestic terrorism as criminal offenses that are dangerous to human life, lack a foreign nexus, and appear to be seeking, quote, to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. Now let's look at what actually happened on January 6th in that regard. First of all, there were criminal offenses that were dangerous to human life. I mean, let's just take a look at this testimony by one of the Capitol Police officers.
Handed me that officer. I handed him off to Jimmy and told him to get him to the back. And I continued to make my way up to the front lines. Once I got up there, it was the first time I really came face to face with these terrorists. They were dressed in, clothing adorned with political slogans, "Make America Great Again," Donald Trump 2020, things of that nature. They were wearing military-style clothing, Kevlar vests, Kevlar helmets. Many of them had gas masks, and quite a few had shields, which they had taken away from law enforcement officers. And they were using them to beat us at the front line. The first thing I told them was, hey, man, we got to get these doors closed. We got injured officers in here. And that really seemed to piss those guys off. They became incredibly violent, and that's when that surge that you watched in some of the video began. And you had a large group at the mouth of that tunnel entrance trying to push their way through the officers who were fighting to defend it. I believe had they done so, or had they accomplished that, they would have trampled us to death. Most certainly, you would have had police officers killed. I fought there at the front for some time. I was yelling out, trying to inspire some of the other officers that were up there that were tired, telling them to dig in and push. And we started to make some progress. We pushed those guys out of the tunnel, out through the initial threshold. And I remember thinking to myself, man, it's good to get some fresh air. It was at that point that I was pulled off the line. That initial period of time where I was pulled, off that line was kind of a blur. I just remember getting violently assaulted from every direction, and eventually found myself out probably about 250, maybe 300 feet away from the mouth of the tunnel where the other officers were at. And I knew I was up shit creek without a paddle. I was trying to push guys off of me, create some space. All the while, I recognized the fact that there were individuals that were trying to grab a hold of my gun. I remember one of them distinctly lunging at me time and time again, trying to grab my gun. And I heard people in the crowd yelling, "Get his gun, kill him with his own gun," and words to that effect. I thought about using my weapon. I believe that there were individuals in the crowd whose intentions were to kill me. And I came to that conclusion because of the fact that
Secondly, lack of foreign nexus. What's that about? Well, that's to kind of contrast domestic terrorism versus something that is an act of war by another country. Or for that matter, foreign terrorism, like what Al-Qaeda, of course, famously did on September 11th. Well, it's clear that most of these individuals who were attacking the Capitol were American citizens. I mean, we've seen that in the prosecution of more than 725 individuals, by the way. So it appears that that second element of domestic terrorism is satisfied by what happened on January 6th. And let's talk about the third element now. Appear to be seeking to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. Well, they explicitly were trying to get the Congress to basically overrule the will of the people and to essentially place Donald Trump as president despite what the election said. So certainly they were trying to influence the policy of the government. And how were they trying to do it? By intimidation or coercion, by basically invading the Capitol. So actually on this point, Tucker Carlson is just plain wrong. It is not a lie. Ted Cruz's statement is absolutely a statement of fact. January 6th was a terrorist event, and many of the individuals, by the way, who were involved and intend to go to trial to defend themselves on these charges, they're actually going to face much more serious penalties as a result of the fact that this is a terrorist event rather than just some random crime. The kind of crimes that people could face more serious charges for as a result of them being deemed domestic terrorism include things like destruction of government property, something that a lot of individuals have been charged with who were involved in the January 6th insurrection. There's also a weapons of mass destruction charge, which could be levied against the individual who put pipe bombs in front of the Democratic and Republican National Committee offices on those days. Similarly, individuals have been charged with making false statements that can also be the basis of an extended prison time as a result of the fact that it was related to domestic terrorism as opposed to simply an act of making false statements. So even though there isn't some specific charge that's been brought against individuals that they were engaged in domestic terrorism, the fact that they were engaged in domestic terrorism could actually result in their prison terms being much longer than they would have been otherwise. Now, the big issue here regarding Ted Cruz is just what a pathetic individual he's become. I mean, he was quite proud of the fact that he was a person of principle and was willing to stand up for principle even when it alienated others. And yet, he has turned into one of Donald Trump's most loyal lapdogs. And his performance on Tucker Carlson was literally pathetic as he's trying to essentially beg for Tucker Carlson's forgiveness for using the word terrorism, even though he was right to use it. I mean, you have to remember, this is the individual who ran against Donald Trump in the primaries, and during that period called Donald Trump a dangerous man. And Donald Trump at the time accused Ted Cruz's father of being involved in the assassination of JFK and made disparaging comments about his wife. And yet Ted Cruz, this supposed man of principle, is willing to essentially lie down to try to curry favor from Donald Trump and these MAGA figures. So much for him being a man of principle. He's nothing more than a pathetic loser at this point. I have to say, although I've never agreed with Ted Cruz and never would have supported him, at least there was a certain piece of me that had a level of respect for him, for his willingness to stand on principle, and for his, frankly, impressive intelligence. However, in his blind servitude to MAGA and to Trump, he has managed to destroy all of that, making me even more confident that Ted Cruz will never be president of the United States, and frankly, he'll be lucky if he's reelected to the Senate one more time. Well, if you agree with me or disagree with me, I'd love to see your comments down below. And over here, I'll link a video to the senators who I think are in competition to be the worst senator in America. And if you could like this video and subscribe to this channel, that'd be a huge help. I'll see you in the next video. In the meantime, let's hope for continued progress. Thank you.